My name's Steve X. I do Crypto's Cash. It's just a brand I kind of made up and am kind of working on. Not real business right now, but more of a spreading the message kind of a thing. Who's already familiar with cryptocurrencies? Cool. You'd be surprised. Most of the people I work with on a daily basis don't have any idea what it is.
At least they've heard of it.
Yeah, exactly. All right, cool. So let me see here. This is a little bit further into the presentation here. So retail adoption of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies has been around since almost the very beginning. I'm sure you all know about Pizza Day in 2010, where $50,000 worth of Bitcoin bought 2 pizzas. Was probably more than that now, I think, or was it 50,000 Bitcoin bought 2 pizzas? So that would be worth several $billion right now. And of course, Bitcoin came out in 2009. Silk Road, all right, exactly. And then in 2014, Microsoft, Overstock.com, the Golden Gate Hotel, and the D all accepted cryptocurrencies. They're coming back to that now, especially at least the D and the Golden Gate. I think they're the same owners. They're still able to do some cryptocurrencies, getting into it right now. And Circa made a big deal about it, at least back during the Bitcoin 2025 conference here in Vegas. As well, still to this day, Steak and Shake accepts Bitcoin via the Lightning Network at their restaurants. Now, I highly advise that if you're going to do that, you should call ahead and say, hey, plug your little POS in for the Bitcoin, because once I've been to the one in Vegas. Well, twice I've been to the one in Vegas. The first time was during Bitcoin 2025, so they were all ready to go because there's plenty of Bitcoiners in town. The second time I went to Steak and Shake was at the one in Hesperia or somewhere there on the I-15, and fortunately I had the time. I was just traveling, so I just hung out and waited until they charged up their POS. And then the third time was back at the Fremont Street location, and they did not have it charged up. So if you were into spending crypto, Bitcoin, I don't know why anybody would spend Bitcoin, but this is another part of my discussion here. I highly recommend spending it at Steak and Shake, since they're literally the only business that regularly accepts it, and even if you don't spend your Bitcoin, just go ahead and buy and replace. So I'm getting a little off subject here. Of course, a lot of businesses use BitPay to pay for to accept cryptocurrency, and BitPay, of course, is a third-party processor, even though Bitcoin was meant to be used peer-to-peer without any third parties. So which kind of brings us up to custodial and self-custodial. I'm going to make a little side note here. I made this presentation about 6 months ago for this meeting, except I left the whole presentation at home and I worked off my notes, so my notes aren't quite in line with the presentation. Yeah. Are you all familiar with the difference between custodial crypto and self-custodial or non-custodial? All right.
Custodial is when you have it on a change versus self-custodial is when you have it in a cold wallet offline.
So kind of. A cold wallet offline is an extra step that's based more for security. You can self-custody in an online wallet as well, as long as you're the person that's in control of the cryptographic keys.
That can be hacked or stolen or whatever.
It can be. Generally, a hack like that isn't because it's online. It's because of your normal hack stuff with the, what do they call it, with the social hacking.
Yeah, if I get hacked, I don't ask who did it and why and all that.
Yeah.
Hacking means your stuff is gone. How they did it is irrelevant.
Right, exactly. So by all means, for security reasons, if you have a mass of crypto, you're going to want it in a secure cold wallet or something like that, not on the internet.
You want to talk about that process today?
I might. So I'm just going to have to do a little review here. So so self-custody versus custodial versus self-custodial. Custodial, sounds like you all kind of know this, but custodial, the banks hold your funds, would be similar to the banks hold your funds or the exchanges hold your funds. And self-custodial, you hold your funds. It would be like going to the bank and asking for your money versus just having your money and being able to spend it how you want. Why does it even matter? Well, we're going to go to a brief history of money because it kind of is the basis for why this even matters to begin with. Barter has been around from the beginning of time. It began with written accounting. Of course, written accounting was a centralized method. You usually had one person, one entity taking care of the adjustments of accounting. 1200 BC, cowrie shells and other items from nature were used for money. Again, I have it listed as decentralized, but further thought says there had to be somebody to designate why that cowrie shell, or how the design of the cowrie shell would be acceptable. Counterfeiting has been a problem from the beginning, whether it was written accounting or cowrie shells or anything else. In 700 BC, coins began to be minted by the governments using gold and silver. And of course, as many of us know, that ended in about 1964 in the United States, which is the most recent number I could come up with. I imagine a few countries probably lingered on after that. Paper currency began in China about 1000 AD. Uses promissory notes for gold and silver, which led us to the gold standard. Several hundred years later in the UK, they used gold for international trade. It was a common weight, measure common value, and they would create the paper, not Chinese paper, their own paper, and back it by gold. Credit cards came around in the 50s. This began electronic payments of sorts, and then debit cards in the 90s. We all probably remember that, late 80s and the 90s when that came around, and really wasn't mainstream when you think about it until at least the mid-90s. You know, most people were not spending with their debit card. That was something you did when you ran out of cash. Bitcoin, of course, comes around in 2009, and that was built on decades of other efforts to create a non-counterfeitable electronic money. So Bitcoin didn't just sprout out of nowhere. It was the summation of years of effort and groups of people.
Well, they say Satoshi came up with it. Is that a real story, or is that just some made-up story that this guy named Satoshi, nobody ever seen, came up with it? I mean, is that BS or is it true?
It's a real story. Now, whether the story's true or not,
That's what I'm talking about.
right? Yeah,
It's like Shakespeare, right?
it's the story.
Was he real?
It's a documented story.
I'm assuming from what I learned in school, but you don't know anymore.
Well, you're
Am I
good.
real?
Right?
I mean, that's what we are
Yeah.
in society.
In this moment, you've got 4 other people to witness your reality. Maybe even a
It's
5th.
perception.
Yeah. So that's definitely a subject for another day. But yes, Satoshi is the author of the Bitcoin white paper, the official
Is that a
author.
real person or just?
I can't tell you that. That's an unknown. Nobody knows. There's many competing theories on who Satoshi
Well,
is.
we know you could be Satoshi.
Probably not. I wouldn't even mistake. There's not much evidence that could even come close to me being that person. The guys in the room before this were probably, they know C++. I guess Bitcoin was written in C++. I couldn't tell you anything about any languages. Okay, so we had a little brief history of money there. And this brings us back to custodial versus self-custodial. As I mentioned before, this is how I presented it the first time, when it should actually be presented like this, knowing what we just went over, where self-custodial is actually holding the silver and that which would have backed the fiat. It's true, it is self-custodial if you have the bearer instrument of the cash, but to actually have the money would be like holding the silver. And this is where cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash and the likes come into play, is that they are the actual asset. And most cryptocurrencies are like this, except for, for the big ones, XRP would not fall under this category. And why does that even matter? Okay, centralized. Now I'm getting into centralized versus decentralized. Yeah, okay. So centralized centralized currency always involves a central authority, someone to create and redeem the currency. Now, since I built this presentation, I watched a video on YouTube, and the guy basically said there's really no such thing as a decentralized money, that literally all the money throughout history has pretty much been used or been authorized by some sort of authoritarian, government or something like that. That would not include, if it's decentralized, it would be basically a barter system of sort. Anyway, so centralized uses technology or designs to prevent counterfeiting, minting precious metals into coins or artistic paper. The coinage minted by governments from gold, or more often silver, made for a centralized money that was also self-custodial. So as I mentioned in the previous slide here, here's your self-custodial money as the silver and the gold. And the user held the actual value, like the silver or gold, versus having the paper value like we had prior to 1970, the 1970s, definitely before the 60s, or before the 70s. As an example, I have a silver $50 here, which if I was to take it to Casterna Taverna and buy something with it, they would say that's 50-cent value. It's got the Kennedy head on it, and it's a 50-cent mint. But the silver value of it is approximately $20. So unless I'm dealing with either the owner who would love to have the silver or the cashier who knows the value of it and would like to cash out and buy it from me like that, it's essentially 50 cents for government money. So I talked about silver being a centralized money if it was minted, and being a self-custodial money if that the user actually had the value, and that was called a bearer asset. So that silver would be a bearer asset. Any paper representing that would be, the banknotes became common in Europe in the 1400s. People would give custody of their gold to jewelers in exchange for a paper receipt. The paper was much easier to carry than heavy gold and silver, and the public began to trust these custodial receipts. So that's kind of the beginning of our paper monies. And then, of course, the idea of the receipt was when you wanted to go, you would take the receipt to a jeweler and get the gold if that's what you wanted. And then this is kind of where the bank runs began, because sometimes as representative paper money gained traction, people's gold would rarely be redeemed, allowing bankers to loan more paper than there was gold or silver. Now by bankers here, I mean the jewelers who were then bankers. And of course they went to jewelers because jewelers already had gold and they had safekeeping of that and paid for the guards and stuff. I says, reviewing above, it seems governments mint centralized self-custodial coins and banks print centralized custodial currency. This final note, the rest of this, taken from the internet, this final was an observation of mine, in that even the US Constitution, they can mint in gold and silver coins, and then it seems that when it gets into banking, then they start printing cash. Decentralized custodial money, does it even exist? That was a thought I had, and I think I've kind of alluded to that previously, in that if it's decentralized, then it's pretty much, or if it's custodial, then it's pretty much not decentralized. But I'm going to go try for it anyway here. Decentralized self-custodial money exists in the form of gold, silver, and Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the first electronic decentralized self-custodial asset to exist. Prior to Bitcoin, if you had an electronic payment, it was done via debit or credit. And of course you need a bank for that. With Bitcoin, no bank was necessary. In the beginning, Bitcoin was only used between individuals, self-custodially without a bank, just by running the Bitcoin software. So you would download the Bitcoin software. I don't imagine it was too easy, and you could mine Bitcoin in the early days. So you would mine it and you could create it yourself if you want a block, and then you could transfer. You still can transfer with the Bitcoin software using Bitcoin Core, or some people would go with Bitcoin Knots nowadays. But the whole idea is that, and even with the whole idea is that it was peer-to-peer money, peer-to-peer electronic money. So you could, instead of eBay needing PayPal, like had Bitcoin come out in 1990, 1993, 1994, PayPal would probably be using Bitcoin instead of, or PayPal wouldn't have had to exist. eBay would have been using Bitcoin. October 5th, 2009, the New Liberty Standard created the first exchange to buy and sell Bitcoin. So we went from Bitcoin being self-custodial just by running the Bitcoin software. Then within the same year, within 10 months, a company came out and created an exchange to buy and sell Bitcoin, so people could somehow send cash to them or gold or whichever and get the Bitcoin from them. I was not part of that, but from what I understand, it was not the easiest thing in the world, and you were risking, of course, there was no collateral by sending your cash through the mail, or maybe they did credit cards or whatever. More exchanges followed, introducing the world to custodial crypto. So people began using, it was so much easier to buy it from a central location, because looking for people that had Bitcoin that were willing to sell it and trusting them that they would actually send you the Bitcoin after you paid them was, or vice versa, was more complicated than using a centralized exchange. In 2011, Mt. Gox, which I believe was the biggest Bitcoin exchange at the time, it was hacked and lost a bunch of its Bitcoin, and then it happened again in 2014. In 2022, most recently, in the largest, like billions and billions of dollars, and it also brought down several other companies like Alameda and a few others. It was basically an absolute Ponzi scheme. FTX had several other related custodial several other exchanges collapsed when their fraud was exposed. So FTX was a guy named Sam Bankman-Fried, and he had ads on Super Bowl, had a stadium named after him and all this stuff, because he was essentially taking billions of dollars here, saying you have Bitcoin, and then he would take that and rehypothecate it with another third party and buy and backing assets. It was very convoluted.
Now he's in prison with Puff Daddy.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we covered a little bit of centralized and custodial versus self-custodial, decentralized, custodial versus non-custodial. Not your keys, not your coins. So when it comes to this fraud in the centralized exchanges, this next thing here is a big deal. Not your keys, not your coins. We kind of all know about this and went over it a little bit at the beginning, but it cannot be emphasized enough. You know, if you're going to buy crypto on an exchange, do it there and then move it on to either a cold wallet or just a self-custody wallet.
So how is it legal that these exchanges like Coinbase, Robinhood, Kraken, and others exist, and then people buy on there, and then they're not responsible for what we bought since it's in their custody? So someone can hack it and they're like, whoa, sorry.
I don't think it plays out like that. I think they're held responsible.
The FTC does have laws that they do have to follow for both auditing and compliance, so they do have to now follow a lot of the same financial institution rules. It used to not be that way.
Like if you have $1 million in crypto on one of those exchanges and you get hacked, is your million secured?
Well, the problem with Bitcoin is if they get hacked, and let's say, they don't use one single wallet. They're like, if someone put all the money on one single wallet, they'd be done. But they do have a lot of multiple wallets on these exchanges to where not one wallet could potentially be hacked.
You're
But
just on the exchange, you're not on the wallet at all. You're just on the exchange and something happens. Is the exchange responsible, like in a bank?
Okay, we'll keep this on subject here. I hear what you're saying, and I know you're talking about a lot of the legislation that's changed recently and updated a lot of this stuff, because prior to the current administration, the government was essentially just avoiding the whole topic of crypto, and so things like you're talking could kind of happen, but in a sense, yes. By law, they had your stuff, and if they lost it, then now they wouldn't necessarily have to replace your Bitcoin, but they did have to replace the value. So Mt. Gox, out of the ashes of Mt. Gox, other cryptocurrency disasters arose, and the phrase "not your keys, not your coins," meaning that if you self-custody your crypto by the beginning, by being the one in control of the private keys. Okay, that wasn't relevant. I thought it was. Mt. Gox finally had their settlement recently, so people didn't get their Bitcoin back. They got the value of the Bitcoin, I believe, at the time of the incident and not at today's value. I don't know how that, you'd have to look that up.
What was that? Because Bitcoin back then, it was probably 10 grand versus 100 and what?
117, 120, yeah.
if you did it today, they have insurance, basically.
Right.
So that's what I was saying. In a bank, in a regular bank, they have a $250,000 FDIC.
Well, that's different.
Right?
That's different.
So they have something
FDIC.
similar with crypto. That's what I'm
Well, if you're talking about a limited supply cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, you can't very well replace it when it's stolen unless you have it. You know, it's not like, so how the FDIC works is the bank says, oh shit, we did our numbers wrong and we don't have enough money to back our loans, even though $1 we can loan 1,000 on it, we still screwed things up somehow. Then the government just prints them the money. So the government, there's no $250,000 for every account sitting around. The government says, oh, you need $250,000? There you go. Now the value of your dollar just dropped by 1/1,000,000% because $250,000 is 1/1,000,000 of the entire supply of government money. Versus cryptocurrency, you can't print it. You know, so once it's gone, it's gone. As far as he was relating to with the insurance, they would have US dollar insurances for replacing the loss. So any exchange that gets hacked, the chances of you getting your cryptocurrency from that exchange are nil, or just about nil. The chances of you getting a US or fiat dollar denominated compensation are better now than they ever have been.
Is it like in some reasonable amount of time, or would it be years later?
Well, I mean, hire a lawyer. It's years later. And history says it's years later. So Mt. Gox hacked in 2011 and 2014. I think 23 or 24. They had some legal, it took that long to sort it all out. Okay, where are we at here? Not your keys, not your coins. So I'm going to rewind here. Out of the ashes of Mt. Gox and other cryptocurrency disaster arose the phrase, not your keys, not your coins. So as I mentioned a couple times, we all know what that means, and it's very, very important. I can bring some side notes on that I don't think on the presentation here. But it's not 2011 or 2014 or even 2022 anymore. Technology has a way of moving forward, and trust has a way of being gained. So what I'm talking about here is today there are many good options for self-custody of your crypto, for safe custody of your crypto, both custodially and self-custodially. But not your keys, not your coins will always ring true. It is the #1 rule of cryptocurrency. So you can have your, like I would trust Coinbase, I would trust Binance, I would trust Kraken. Not to hold large amounts of my crypto for long periods of time, but to hold a small amount of crypto for a short period of time and to buy and sell with them. You know, they're trustworthy like that. Everybody knows you're not going to get scammed. The government regulations, Coinbase has actually been key to developing a lot of the government regulations so that the public can be safe with their trust of cryptocurrencies, as well as many other things. And but not your keys, not your coins is very important. I'm here telling you this message, but the general consensus and marketing of all cryptocurrencies, especially ironically via Coinbase and Binance and these companies, is to not have to let them hold your crypto. You know, I think Coinbase does have a self-custody wallet, but they're all going for convenience and fun and gamifying the whole situation and not really treating it like money. They're treating it like they treat those payday apps and things like that, where you can get fronted your money and everything's all good and fun and nothing bad will ever come of that. So obviously they're a capitalist business and they need to make money with their ideas, and so they're putting every fish hook in the water that they can, seeing what fish they can catch. The choice to make, different strokes for different folks, part 1. The cheapest way to get into crypto is through a trusted centralized exchange like Kraken or Coinbase. These are custodial by default, but have some self-custody options. I've heard that Coinbase, and I'm sure Kraken does too, because Kraken is kind of big on this, does have a self-custodial wallet. I don't recommend using it because the same way you don't keep your business funds and your personal funds in the same bank. You won't want them to be able to swap if they decide to swap. You just want, I'm a diversifying guy. You know, I like to keep things decentralized. Having everything in one location is not the best thing. There are plenty of great self-custody options to choose from too. You can usually buy, sell, and trade with either choice. If you make the centralized custodial choice, the experience will be similar to that of a bank account or stock trading account. In fact, familiar services like Robinhood, PayPal, Venmo, and Cash App all offer basic cryptocurrency services. Robinhood actually has some very competitive cryptocurrency services, and they're competing head-to-head with Coinbase. PayPal and Venmo are the same parent company, and they offer a lot of the same services. And until recently, they began only with Bitcoin, Ethereum, Bitcoin Cash, and Litecoin for their cryptos, because those have been recognized for a long time to be commoditized cryptocurrencies. So they weren't falling in the area that XRP does as to whether it's a security or not, and a lot of the other smaller cryptos.
That was already solved, wasn't it?
Yeah, but at the time it wasn't. And so because it has been solved, and because a lot of the rules have changed with the Genius Act and the Clarity Act, I don't know if that passed yet or not, but because a lot of the rules have changed, Venmo, PayPal are bringing in multiple different cryptocurrencies that you can trade as well on there. So, and Cash App, of course, is Bitcoin only. I think they do the Lightning wallet as well, and of course, US dollars. A note about PayPal and Venmo. So if you guys notice on these cards, I've got a few cryptocurrencies there that I like to promote for crypto as cash. And that's Bitcoin, Litecoin, Monero, Bitcoin Cash. And then I put USDC in there. I'll talk about that in a bit. But I chose Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Bitcoin Cash because they were available on PayPal and Venmo and Cash App. And Bitcoin is available on Cash App. So I thought getting ordinary people to use it and spend it, it would be much easier to do if it was already on apps that they were familiar with versus having them to download other apps.
Does replicate a coin? Do you get paid from the companies to do that?
Well, they're cryptocurrencies, so there is no company.
Well, I mean, somebody.
No, nobody's paying me. So unless you want to donate an old cell phone or tablet so I can use it as a POS for businesses.
So why do you wear like a Litecoin shirt versus a Bitcoin or XRM or Hedera?
Because I didn't pay to get into the honestly, I don't like Bitcoin that much, especially for day-to-day money. I put it there because it's the most popular cryptocurrency, but I think their whole notion of Lightning is just convoluted mess and is much more difficult to use than Lightning and Bitcoin Cash. Monero's good for privacy, but it has usability issues, but they do have a great ecosystem. They've got a website called XMR Bazaar. And when I say they, I'm talking about the community. I'm not talking about Monero.com. You know, I'm talking about the community of people who spend time developing, and then they've got seed funding that they use for that too. Monero has a method to contribute to their products or their usage things. So their XMRBazaar.com is like an eBay, but you use XMR, and I think you can use Gold. It's a beta thing, so but worth checking out. Did I answer your question?
Well, I know there are influencers out there.
Oh, yeah. So Litecoin,
So
I like.
in a way, an influencer.
I'll give you the answer on that. So Bitcoin, when I first got into crypto in like, say, 2019, I was just barely getting my toes wet. I opened up a Coinbase account. I bought a few dollars worth of Bitcoin. It doubled in price. I sold it. I was just kind of new to trading and all that stuff, so I was just toying around with it. A few years later, I started getting more heavily into Bitcoin, and it occurred to me that the limited supply, you know, eventually is going to get to zero, and the less and less Bitcoin that is in the world, because people lose it all the time. You know, I mean, you know.
It's 21 million supposedly, right?
Yeah. I think it's even right now. There's about 19 million that have been printed up, or not printed, but created, and yeah, thank you. 19 million have been mined so far, and of that 19 million, like 2 to 3 million are just gone, like haven't been moved in so long that it's, you know. And I figure by the time the last Bitcoin is mined, and they say 2140, that there will be such little Bitcoin in circulation that the ordinary person can't use it. I've got different beliefs on how the Lightning Network can be used to essentially create some sort of inflation separation between actual Bitcoin and that which is dispersed on the Lightning Network. Like if the fees get high enough, it would be next to impossible to get it back onto the main chain. I'm not going to get into that right now, and frankly, fees have been very low, and the blockchain on Bitcoin has been very light because ETFs are taking over, which is something I'm not going to get into right now. That isn't, ETFs are entirely entirely custodial. In other words, not only do you not have Bitcoin, you've got a piece of paper that says you have a piece of paper. You've got a web entry somewhere saying you've got a piece of paper.
Why would somebody buy the ETF versus the actual Bitcoin?
You're going to have to go to the crypto meetups from Vegas Crypto Group and find out and talk to the individuals there.
They don't trust buying Bitcoin originally. Like maybe it's a bank that has rules against it, or like a retail financial advisor.
So yeah, he's mentioning that institutions basically, the legislation wasn't in place in time for institutions to directly buy Bitcoin, and then they have to have probably a Bitcoin department to manage that and make sure it's safe and all this stuff and different protocols that they would do. So they would just buy an ETF, put all the burdens on top of JP Morgan or Fidelity or whoever, and then they just have the ETF. So they get the value. It's an ETF. They would get the action from the value, but without the responsibility of losing it.
But it drives demand for Bitcoin, right? Because the ETF has
I'm not going to comment on that. You know, I mean, I can, but it's like when the ETF came out, the Bitcoin price didn't go through the roof. You know, ETFs don't really have an effect on demand, I don't think.
Well, when you get a guy like Buffett that says, I wouldn't pay $25 for all the Bitcoin on earth. That weighs on a lot of people because Buffett is Buffett.
Right. I think Buffett has changed his mind though, so that probably helped with the price.
He's also 100 years old, so you know.
I got a guy I'm working with who has billions of dollars in Bitcoin, and he won't touch it.
All right,
He'll
guys.
find any other way to do an investment.
You know, even Jamie Dimon.
Because the performance has been so good over the last 10 years, he's stupid to touch it right now.
All right, I'm going to come back to here, but that would be self-custodial right there. He's got $1 billion worth of Bitcoin.
Jamie Dimon from Chase says, you know, if I had the political power to remove crypto, he would. And then he buys stuff in the back end.
Right,
He's saying different in public.
So you would be definitely well served to go to some of the crypto meetups. If you go to meetup.com and look up Vegas Crypto Group or just type in Bitcoin, there's 2 or 3 of these a week in town. So Mike Wilson, who's out there with Stand with Crypto, puts together all the meetups and does a very good job, and he's been doing it for a long time.
Even if we get 12 people at a meetup, it's like half the people are developers and the other half are whale investors.
All right, Rocco, hold up here. I'm doing a presentation here. So.
What's a will investor?
Okay, so if you, all right, so where are we? We're at centralized versus decentralized, self-custodial versus custodial. Okay, if you make the centralized custodial choice, as I mentioned before, it'll be very similar to online banking. You can be expected to need an ID, needing banking information, and use it when you're using a centralized custodial service. Now, some of you probably have electronic banking that you do, because we all do. Most of us do, I should say. And you've probably run into something called Plaid, where they do some sort of security verification for you, or I don't know what the thing does, but basically, yeah, the number one rule used to be, just like looking both ways before you cross the street, don't give anybody your password, don't give anybody your username, okay? And what does Plaid do? So they're being very accustomed to be stupid people. And so Plaid says, hey, we need your username and your password so we can access your bank account anytime we want. So it's easier for you to make transactions with this other thing, and then we've got your KYC and all this stuff. Well, one thing, cryptocurrency used self-custodially does not need KYC. It's just like cash, except it's electronic, hence crypto is cash. So Plaid would have your information. So if there's what's the new thing called, it's not called modern banking. I'm not going to get into that right now. But you need your ID, your banking information, and you're giving up all this personal information. What they do with that, who knows? There's hacks on all this stuff all the time, weeks and hundreds of hacks every week, information getting stolen. Self-custody wallets like Cake, Stack, and Edge do not require ID. These apps use third parties to buy, sell, and trade cryptocurrencies, so you may need to give some banking info if you're using the third parties. But for the basic functions of the crypto wallets, if you're doing peer-to-peer, self-custodial transactions, I highly recommend Cake Wallet. It's very easy to use for new users. They've got an easy username and password set up that supposedly happens on your phone, and they send hashes up. It's relatively secure and easy to do. If you get more advanced, you can get more into it. It does cover advanced features too. Stack is okay right now, and Cake is a good one too, but the three, Edge is very good. And these are mobile phone wallets. Edge, I believe all three are also available for those of you who are de-Googling or something like that, available through F-Droid, or at least with an APK. And then there's also the centralized exchange and the decentralized exchange, which hopefully takes, there we go, the exchanges. Okay, once again, continuing different strokes for different folks, because all of this amounts to what you want to do with your money and how you want to manage your cryptocurrency. There's no one size fits all. Centralized, we talked about how buying and selling on an exchange might be easier. On a centralized exchange might be easier for you. Maybe you're happy dealing with IDs and bank infos and fingerprints and eye scans and everything like that. Then a centralized exchange is good. And with a centralized exchange, it requires ID, bank info, etc. All trades are documented by the exchange, so you're not the only person documenting like the transactions. There's easy record keeping, usually by the exchange. So you come to the end of the year, you say, hey, Coinbase, what's my tax document? And they say, we'll get that right for you. And you're done. You give that to your accountant or HR Block, is that the company? And one of those tax people. It's easy to cash out to USD via your bank account because you either got the ACH or a Plaid connection or something like that. So if you want to sell your crypto, you can just sell it and the money loads into your bank in 2 or 3 days, whatever the ACH time is. It's easy to trade across multiple chains. So let's say you're getting into cryptocurrency trading, similar to Forex trading, you're changing values, Bitcoin's up today, Monero's down, you're going to buy Monero, vice versa, or however you like that, or Ethereum and Polygon, and there's thousands of them. So if that's your game, it's very easy to trade on those. There's a lot of liquidity, they're providing the liquidity. And then, of course, options are limited by regulations because it's not decentralized, and they've got to follow the rules, which if you're Coinbase, you're also making the rules. And I'll emphasize again that Coinbase is somebody I would consider to be trustworthy, depending on your use case. If you're going for some sort of ultra privacy thing, then you obviously aren't going to want to use Coinbase. But the opposite of the centralized exchange is the decentralized exchange. And decentralized exchanges they come in a couple different varieties, but in general, they require that you have crypto. So most decentralized exchanges, you're not paying fiat money for crypto. By fiat, I mean US dollars, Mexican pesos, any sort of government money. You would already need crypto to do your trading on. So you do crypto to crypto trades. Some of them have USDC that you can trade for dollar amounts. Others is just one straight crypto to the other. Different currencies use different exchanges. For example, a decentralized exchange, popular decentralized exchange called BISC is Bitcoin centric. So you can buy and sell Bitcoin. So either you're buying Bitcoin with fiat currency or you're buying Bitcoin with Litecoin or a number of other cryptocurrencies and selling for another cryptocurrencies, but you can't sell, say, Litecoin for Bitcoin Cash. You cannot do that. You have to go through Bitcoin. And you can't buy Bitcoin Cash with cash on BISC. You would have to buy the Bitcoin first. And so Bitcoin is the unit of account on that app. And there's a similar one from Monero. Then there is also, these are some pretty, so BISC has been around for about 11 years. So it's got a lot of confidence. They've got BISC 2 out now, which makes it easier to onboard with trading. But this is also, I guess, on top of being a DEX, these things I'm talking about are also peer-to-peer exchanges. So there are only decentralized exchanges where you can interchange the cryptos. A common one is ChangeNow is very popular. They've got low fees. ChangeNow.io, if you happen to look it up. I believe there are ChangeNows that are not .io, and be cautious with all of these decentralized exchanges. Do a sample thing first. Definitely do your research on these because there are some that will take your funds. I've had that happen to me once. Unfortunately, it was only about $20 worth. But ChangeNow.io, no problems. Exolix. If you want to know which ones are safe, or you can even trade peer-to-peer, not peer-to-peer, you can trade decentralized exchanges on Edge app. They've got a list of decentralized exchanges and centralized exchanges within the app that you can go to. And of course, they're all been vetted by Edge. Decentralized exchange, you may need a bridge to swap from one chain to another. So let's say you've got somebody paid you in USDC, which is a US dollar coin by a company called Circle that runs through Coinbase. And they sold it to you on Polygon network, right? Or they paid you on the Polygon network, but you need to put it on Arbitrum. Then you're going to have to pay some sort of bridge fee to make that happen. That's probably pretty complex, and one of the reasons I don't talk too much about stablecoins. I've included it here for convenience. In the meantime, well, I'll get into this in a minute here. Trades are managed solely by you on a decentralized exchange. I say that, but when I was talking about, like, let's just use ChangeNow, an example, a decentralized exchange like that. Of course, it's not what's called an atomic swap. So they are taking your crypto and giving you the other crypto so they're actually taking some sort of custody of it. So it's not a non-custodial decentralized exchange. Now I'm asking myself questions about how that makes sense, but maybe it does. It works. All I know is generally if your amounts aren't too high, they're not going to ask for any ID. If you're talking about thousands of dollars, they're probably going to say, hey, we can't make this transaction happen without getting some KYC from you. Know your customer information, ID, things like that. And then P2P and atomic swaps. So I kind of touched on that, and you will not have P2P and atomic swaps on a centralized system. Most of these other things, well, I guess they are separate. I separate them here. So P2P, peer-to-peer, transactions happen, like I mentioned, on BISC. Another one called Rito Swap, which is Monero-centric. Everything goes in and out of Monero versus Bitcoin. And then atomic swaps, there's a good exchange for that. Reasonable. It's very low liquidity. This is all, I wouldn't say BISC is beta. Rito Swap might be beta, and definitely Basic Swap, which does the atomic swaps, is totally beta. So liquidity is mediocre on there. The dominant currency on there is Monero, but you can trade a little bit of Bitcoin, but most of the Bitcoiners are over on BISC. But the idea is that with the atomic swaps, you make an offer. Say you want to sell some Litecoin for some Dogecoin. You make the offer, hey, I'm selling one Litecoin for however many Dogecoin, right? And you put it up there, and it goes out into the ether, and other people with the app find the trade and they want to make the trade. What happens is when they take the trade, then it goes into a smart contract, and the smart contract with an atomic swap, it's either fails or either goes through or it fails. So and everybody gets their money back if it fails. And it usually takes between 5 and 20 or 30 minutes for the smart contract to finalize. And with Basic Swap, you can watch the different steps of the smart contract as it's happening. Like I said, it's very, very new. It's not a lot of liquidity, but it does work. And of course, DeFi options that are not available on a centralized exchange. So DeFi is decentralized finance. CeFi or TradFi would be centralized or traditional finance. DeFi, an example of that would be, there's a pretty good app called Aave, A-A-V-E, Aave.com. So app.aave.com, and you can, we're getting into some trading stuff, which is not my expertise at all. But basically, they do something where people want a loan, they want to borrow, say, USDC, so they can make a trade here, and within a few minutes, they're going to trade it back so that you can get interest on that. So you get interest on their loan. So Aave's paying you 3 or 4% interest. The person who's borrowing is paying 7 or 8% interest. So you just get your cut of that. That's one example of DeFi. And oh, by the way, Aave again doesn't require ID or anything like that. So it's pretty fun being able to do full banking options without needing a bank. It's entirely a bankless system. Which, speaking of bankless, there's a podcast out there called Bankless. It's a very good podcast. There's a lot of crypto podcasts out there, but they cover government regulations. Really good guests. So let me see what I have next. Are there any questions?
So even though like there's centralized and decentralized opportunities in crypto, you're still being tracked in the sense of all of your crypto, even if you are running a core wallet, it's still hitting the ClearNet. I found in most better solutions utilizing Tor, you want to make sure that your wallet never hits the ClearNet and it's always obscured on the Tor network. And then there's a few like options on Tor where you can like extract it with like gift cards or like straight cash, directly, and then usually they throw in like a tumbler in between or whatever. I'm not condoning violating the laws, by the way, but in the terms of, for example, not having people understand where your funds are.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I have like a setup in Swiss, like a core wallet, and some other places on some virtual Linux boxes, just for security purposes. But also, it's more of like, if there's ever a major disaster, the government can't compromise my wallets for their gain, because if we have like World War III, I'm not saying that would happen, but
Good luck getting the internet.
exactly. But you can get to the data center, or you have a backup of your wallets in certain physical form.
Automatically the wallet, unless you're running a core, unless you're running a core wallet where you've got the DAT file, your 12 words work fine anywhere in the world if you have your internet connection.
And then if you can get 6 people to validate it and somehow trick people to then think that they...
All right, now we're getting into privacy and security and not really the usage of cryptocurrency, which I haven't really touched much on yet, but...
I just had to get that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. By all means, show up to the Vegas Crypto Group meetups, man. They're really fun. So we talked about exchanges and self-custodial versus non-custodial, centralized versus decentralized. Have fun. Okay. I was told by James, who usually gives this speech, to emphasize that, while I'm emphasizing the fun, to emphasize that it is still brand new technology and there are numerous choices to make in the world of cryptocurrencies. So as far as we've come in cryptocurrencies with the laws and with certain cryptos rising to the top where they can be trusted, there are still plenty of scams out there. I was talking to a guy the other day. Somebody paid him in some weird ass crypto, and it was listed at $40 a coin or something like that. And then he tries to take it to cash it out on Coinbase, and they're like, "Oh, what is this coin?" So, and the value of it was 4 millionths of a cent or something like that. So, providing liquidity is a whole game that scammers can use to make a coin look like it's $500. But let's say they print up or create, say, 1,000 tokens, and they take 10 tokens and give it $500 of liquidity, making it look like it's $50 a coin, right? Well, the other 990, the other 990 coins don't have any liquidity to them. So while you can buy, the 10 coins, anyway, unless somebody provides liquidity, which, again, I'm getting into complicated stuff there. The point being, be cautious, do your research, read up on internet, stick with the mainstream stuff if you don't know what you're doing, or play it small and know that you're being risky if you're dealing with stuff that's new, the next big thing, or anything like that. While I'm not going to put my house on it, I have 99.9% confidence that these coins are not rug pulls, okay? Now, whether the price will go up or down is nothing anybody can predict. But the people, the developers, their goal is not to screw people over. Okay, the internet's been around for nearly 60 years. Have fun, remember? The internet's been around for nearly 60 years, and it took at least 20 years to enter pop culture, like war games, in 1983, and another 10 years to crest into homes in 1993, when people started getting in the internet in their homes. And that was just the beginning of that, because it wasn't even another 10 years before YouTube came out, and Facebook a few years after that. Most of you are aware of the massive changes that have taken place since then, especially since the introduction of the smartphone. So the smartphone, my first smartphone I bought was in 2011, I believe. So I know many people had others before that, but mine was in 2011, and I am definitely at the tail end of things. But the point being, cryptocurrency is 15 years old. Bitcoin was invented 15 years ago. So it has not been around, 16 years ago. It has not been around long. All the freedom the internet has brought to communication is now brought to money in the form of cryptocurrencies. The irony of that is in today's day and age, they are clamping down on the internet like there's no tomorrow all over the world. It's freaking nuts, between their, what do they call it, the misinformation, or whichever side's talking about the other side. They're finding ways to need ID to use the internet. They're finding ways to block the internet in the United States and the Western world, and it's pretty nuts, if you ask me. Fortunately, we have Tor and I2P and things like that. So there's always, it's a cat and mouse game, apparently. Something's around for so long, gets embedded in society, finally reaches people who say, "Oh my God, I didn't know that was on the internet. I can't do that," or my kid's listening to heavy metal. Yeah, that's showing my age. You know what I'm saying? Remember, I bet you can't. It took you 1 full year to learn how to walk and 2 years to learn how to talk. So give yourself a little forgiveness on the cryptocurrency world. Stick with it. It'll come to you, and appreciate it. Tell everybody you know about it, when you know your right audience. Cryptocurrencies are the new money, for better or for worse, really. I don't know what everybody's personal thoughts are. I know you and I probably share some similar ideas, and everybody in this room already know a bunch of the principles, the basic principles I brought up earlier. So I imagine we're all sort of like-minded here, in that money should be ours to spend as we wish freely, and not have to be regulated by a third party, and being told what we can and can't buy. If you want to go home, on your way home, stop at the liquor store and get a 12-pack for the 4th night in a row, it's your own damn business. It's nobody's business to tell you you've got your allotment of booze that week. Oops. So no one knows exactly how it will all play out. Stablecoins are being pushed heavily. Donald Trump took office. Oh, Bitcoin, yeah, and then he immediately told everybody, and the whole crowd just sat there in silence, like, "Are you freaking kidding me? This is not how this works." But at least we knew what was coming, and he's pushing those stablecoins, because we don't want a CBDC. Anyway, I have a side note for stablecoins in a minute. No one knows exactly how it will play out, but it is my opinion that self-custody transactions are the safest bet as a society. So please take the time to learn more. And all that said, I have so many notes here that I'm going to have to make a whole other presentation, because this one talks a little bit more about businesses and stuff. So I do have I don't know how many of you own businesses or wish to accept crypto for your business, or know businesses who might be interested in accepting crypto. There's some wonderful tools out there. One that I found, and I've been looking for this stuff for a long time, one called BitRequest, which it's an open source thing. The guy, you send him an email, he'll make a modification to the code for you, but it has multiple coins on there, like almost all, well, any Ethereum coin, of course, but Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, Monero, Bitcoin Lightning, if that's what you want to do. And it's a nice little app. You just type in the US dollar amount or whichever fiat amount you have it set up for, and it brings up the QR code, and the customer would scan that, and it sends it to whichever wallet you want to go to. It uses your public key address for generating the QR codes to go to your wallet. But it's really the best product out there that's so easy to use. There's something called BTC Pay Server, which was developed by the BTC people. Not really a fan of the BTC culture, but if you want your number to go up, by all means, go at it. But BTC Pay Server, other coins have been set up for it, so it'll do multiple coins. But compared to BitRequest, you download the app or go to their web app, and it's in seconds. Not seconds. It takes a few minutes to set up your which cryptos you wish to accept. But compared to needing to build a server or buy some product, it's just an absolute delight to use BitRequest. And so I definitely promote that one a lot. It's 100% self-custodial. It has multiple coins. It's very easy to set up. Employees cannot access funds, which was the main thing. And I would talk to some of these not web developers, crypto wallet developers, and I say, hey man, how do I get a QR so my business can accept crypto? And they, well, just use our wallet. And then I'm like, yeah, but if I hand that wallet to the employee can now spend my crypto. So with BitRequest, it's a pure cash register. You could send the money to a wallet in Switzerland if you want. So it never even goes to a wallet anywhere in the world because it's crypto. You can run the same server as your website. So if you have a website, it's very easy. You download the BitRequest code, throw it up on your server. I'm not a web guy. I mean, I know a little bit of stuff, but or a developer. All I know is I can do this. I take the folder, drop it into my website thing, and point the URL there, or use the URL, and it works. You set it up just like normal. So it's super easy to use. Like I mentioned before, it's pretty easy to contact the developer. I highly recommend, if you're using it, tip the guy. So he's got a tip thing, and he has a sample website too if you wanted to check that out, and I'm sure he'll build it for you. I don't know him personally. I met this guy, quote unquote, via having found BitRequest through lots of searching and noodling around, And then there's BitPay. BitPay is a custodial payment service. So BitPay, I think they charge you about the same as a credit card company, might 2-3% or something like that. But they will they will make it so you can accept any cryptocurrency, and then they'll turn that into fiat for you, or whichever assignment you want to do with them. But they are a paid service. They're a centralized paid service. A lot of people use them. My problem with using companies like BitPay and Coinbase Commerce, because Coinbase Commerce offers the same thing, is I've noticed that, I don't think BitPay's gone there yet, but Coinbase Commerce, people using that, they'll ask which wallet you're paying with and give you a specific QR code for that wallet. So if you try to scan the QR code with any other wallet, it doesn't accept it, so you can't pay with it. And sometimes you just can't get a straight up crypto address to scan. You have to use one of their pre-populated wallet lists. Well, if Edge isn't on there or whatever, and then a lot of these wallets they have are wallets that would require KYC. So it comes back to the self-custody transactions are our safest bet as a society, and I also promote no KYC on that level too, because I've been a fan of cash. I just debit cards, grocery stores. Maybe none of you remember buying groceries in 1987, but when they first started coming out with the rewards cards, this is actually a positive. At the time we thought, oh, now they're going to know which groceries you're buying and they'll cut you off, like the example I said about the beer earlier. It hasn't happened. Instead, they send you coupons, so it's all cheaper for the items you buy more often. They want to keep you coming in. So there's always that, but when it comes to the actual money versus drawing you into a store, that's a different story. I mentioned stablecoins. So one of the fun things about Bitcoin Cash that's pretty new to them, it's not even a year old, they have a collateralized stablecoin that just came out, like I said, last December, called MUSD, Moria Money, MORIA.money. And it's pretty cool, and it seems to be doing a lot of good for the Bitcoin Cash network, because people can now, when Bitcoin is $600, they can cash it out into $1 things, and when it drops back down, they can buy back in and get more Bitcoin Cash. Now, creating the Moria money, you have to go to their website and do the collateralization thing. I think they liquidate your account at like 120% or maybe 110%. So most people are collateralized at about 200 to 300% for creating the coins. I'm figuring out the financial benefit of doing this too, because it's costing 3% a year. You can adjust your. Have fun figuring it out on your own, and come to the meetups and tell me what you found out, because I could really use some help on that. I'm just a fucking working idiot that is learning about all this stuff. I've been big on freedom for a long time. Back in the 90s, I had a friend who I thought he was batshit crazy when he told me that TVs could spy on you. How could a big box this big, big cube with a piece of glass this thick on it spy on you, right? Well, this is pre-93, so when this information was coming out, and lo and behold, 30 years later, there's TVs that can watch what you do, and they know everything about you. So he had many other messages that we thought was freaking nuts, and
Why couldn't this be a microphone?
it is a microphone.
Well, that's what I mean. If somebody wants to hack it and listen into what you're doing.
Right. So it's already hacked, okay? If you got the Facebook app on there or any other apps that have access to your microphone, they're hacking it. So, like, legally, you've given them permission.
It's kind of creepy.
We're there. I was talking to somebody earlier today. This is Star Wars era. So all the shit that's on Star Wars is real now. It's fucking weird as fuck.
You have Google.
Of course.
Google listens to everything you say. If you say, "Hey Google," the phone listens.
So we're diverging into privacy and security, which we're free to discuss anything you want at the Vegas Crypto Group meetups. They're really a lot of fun. I mean, the questions you're asking, you go there and we chit chat. Damien's there all the time. He'll sell you a house. So yeah, please feel free to take these cards with you if there's not another one out there. They give a little description on why I chose these cryptocurrencies, and of course the USDC coin. As businesses, when I talk to businesses, I say, hey, instead of talking to a business and trying to get them to accept all of these cryptocurrencies and explaining all that to them, I can say, hey, just accept USD coin and you save transaction fees. You no longer pay the 2 or 3%. I wish that was the truth, but it's just not, because if they get paid USDC coin on Polygon and they need to convert it to this and that, and it's why crypto isn't being used every day, because it's too effing confusing. But if you're a business, you'll go into business, try to get them to accept a stable coin. That's easier. And the stable coins are actually getting more completed. It's my understanding that the base network that Coinbase brought around is very fluid on cross-chain bridges and things like that. So it eliminates a lot of the problems that I ran into even a year ago. But if they're accepting USDC and you've got Bitcoin, you can convert your Bitcoin into USDC and then spend it at their restaurant. So at least it puts people in the crypto ecosystem. Now, if the businesses that choose to accept cryptocurrency use Coinbase Commerce and BitPay, who are going to be regulated by the government versus a self-custodial thing, then you'll probably be running into the problem I was talking about earlier, whereby you can only use a certain wallet to do it. And so let's just say it's highly unlikely my dreams are going to come true. So as far as freedom of spending money, except with XMR Bazaar. So, but there's a few places left in town that still like taking cash. I was surprised to find a business.
All the casinos?
No, they don't. They are taking their little own version of crypto now. M Resort has the Pen. I think it's called the Pen app. The Emerald in Henderson it's called Coin, Koin. So you would give them fiat somehow, and they would give you what I'm assuming is a cryptocurrency of sort, or at least some sort of database thing for themselves. But I don't know why they wouldn't make it a crypto. It'd be more secure than a database. Am I out of time? Is it 4 o'clock already? Okay, cool.
You're out. I'm just waiting.
Shit, I can't believe I spoke that long. Yeah, any questions?
I liked your example earlier of the Kennedy coin that's worth 50 cents.
They better put that
silver's
one.
coin on is worth $10 or whatever.
20.
20, yeah. Do you see something like that happening with Bitcoin?
Yes, it is happening. And again, why I chose these coins minus the stable coin, of course. They're all limited supply. Well, Monero does not have, well, it has what's called a tail emission. So there's always a constant block reward forever built into it. Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Bitcoin Cash all have a limited supply. The two Bitcoins, 21 million, Litecoin, 84 million. Monero's inflation is, I think it's actually less than Bitcoin's right now. So while Bitcoin does have a limited supply throughout all of time, currently it does have an inflation rate because the coins are still being minted. And same with Bitcoin Cash and Litecoin. Monero will always have an increase in supply, which brings, which is a good thing. For a lot of people think it's a good thing because, as I said, the supply of Bitcoin becomes more limited because of loss and just people hoarding it, basically. Then where are the mining fees coming from? If nobody's spending it, there's no mining fees. There's no fees being paid to miners. So how does the network secure itself? Monero's got the tail emission, so it's guaranteed to have rewards for miners for all of eternity, or for however long computers last. Anyway, what was your question?
So if I have some Bitcoin and I go to the Golden Gate and I say spend fractional amount of Bitcoin that I think is worth $1 based on the current fiat exchange rate, is the Golden Gate going to tell me that's worth 75 cents? Or if not, at what point will that decouple?
Well,
to your
my
$70?
best understanding of how the Golden Gate is accepting cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, is they have an ATM machine. So yes, quite frankly, it will be worth 75 cents to them because those dang ATMs charge up the behind for that stuff.
It's like if you were to go to a different country and do like a currency exchange,
Yeah, like
they're going
buy
to take
cash
some
and
type
pay
of
for it.
fee.
Yeah.
There's a lot better ways to exchange your currency before going to places, swapping with someone for straight cash.
Yeah.
and
So
then
bringing it back to your example of the Golden Gate, conversely, if you go to Steak and Shake, who does accept Bitcoin on the Lightning Network, they charge you straight across the board, to the best of my knowledge. There might be a 1% add-on. I would really just have to check my receipts and how much I spent on a couple of hamburgers. But I recommend going there. If you got some Bitcoin, or just buy some Bitcoin while the price is cheap, right? Not while the price is cheap, while the fees are low. Fees are still 16 cents,
make sure
I think.
you check mempool because you can get screwed over bad.
Oh yeah, here. I'll talk. Do you know what he's talking about? So there's a website called mempool.space. So if you want to check what the Bitcoin fees are at the moment, go to mempool.space, and it tells you. It's pretty cool. It's got an animated graphic of what the blockchain looks like. It's super cool. Litecoin's got one too. The one for Bitcoin Cash is hit and miss. It's operated by a smaller developer, but the Bitcoin one is absolutely amazing, and the Litecoin one is cool too. And they tell you what the Bitcoin fees are there too for the transaction that moment.
Okay.
So it's 16 cents is about the lowest you're going to get right now, because that's 1 sat per byte. And a Satoshi is the smallest unit of Bitcoin currently. So.
And it's going to depend on how many inputs and outputs that you have. So
Yeah.
there's things called inputs and outputs in Bitcoin. to
UTXOs.
where If you have multiple wallets and you're sending a transaction to someone using multiple wallets, that's all going to cost extra. And if you're sending to multiple people in that same transaction, it's going to make it more expensive.
So basically what he's saying is, you've accepted cryptocurrency, you've accepted Bitcoin from 20 different people. And so you've got 20 different transactions in your wallet, even though you're seeing one balance. And you go to spend 1/5 of that, right? So now you've got 5 transactions going into one transaction. So you're going to have basically 5x that 16 cents.
Right.
I don't know if that's the exact calculation, but basically that's what it is.
Okay.
You
But that's
always
not
wanna try
impacting
to-
the intrinsic value.
You always want to try to get bigger deposits to your wallet, because then it's one output and one input and one output. Where if you get a whole bunch of like teeny microtransactions, you're going to have a lot more transactions.
And while that's true for most cryptocurrencies that are based on Bitcoin, Litecoin and Bitcoin Cash don't run into that problem as much, mostly because they're not valued as high, but they're still, Huh?
Not enough usage.
But if you used it, there'd be more,
Blocks are not full.
right? Litecoin actually matches transactions per second of Bitcoin many times. So while Bitcoin will be rolling in
Right, but
5,000 or 6,000 transactions per block, it's not uncommon. It's
The
not.
blocks are not full. It's not achieving that throughput because there's not enough requests.
So Litecoin is every 2.5 minutes versus every 10 minutes. So that means every 4 blocks is equal to 10 blocks, is equal to 1 block on Bitcoin, number of transactions speaking. So Bitcoin can do, I think it max out about 7,000 transactions on a block, and it's not uncommon. It's not an everyday occurrence, but it's not uncommon for 4 blocks of Bitcoin to equal 7,000 or more transactions, or Litecoin to equal 7,000 or more transactions, or at least the equivalent of whatever Bitcoin might be doing at that time. So, yeah, the rest of it's personal choice, which of these you choose to use and for what purpose. You know, this is why, you know, Bitcoin's, they do the hodl thing for savings, which it's hard for the mind to wrap around why you would then want to convert it to Lightning, and which costs a fee, and then spend it, which is
Why would you spend it?
because Jack Dorsey told me to. Finally.
Well, if you go
And-
to
and see-
Dubai, they're starting to accept Bitcoin for like almost everything. So if you go to like a shop, you know, you can usually find people that are going to accept.
I forgot the Pline stores, the high-end hip-hop stuff or whatever they got going, expensive pseudo-custom clothing they got at the in the Cosmo City Center. What's that? Harmon Avenue there where the Aria is, and they got the Cosmo and
Crystal shops?
Yeah, yeah. There's a Pline store in there, so if you're inclined to just go look, you know, generally their crypto is accepted online. Most of these stores, they don't have physical. This is why I say, even just for the principle, for messaging to Steak and Shake, if I go in there after a few months and that thing's not charged, that means nobody's buying burgers with Bitcoin. And there's plenty of reasons to not do that, but it's also not difficult to just get your Bitcoin on, I don't know, does Coinbase do Lightning yet? I don't know. Just to get yourself some Lightning, easy to use Lightning wallet is Moon. It's super easy to use. You just throw some Bitcoin at it, and you'll get charged fees and things like that. But you got to send some messaging to the retailer that this is what we want.
How long does it take? Like I want to buy a cheeseburger with whatever coin, and okay, is it instantaneous?
The Lightning is instantaneous.
How about
Bitcoin is not. So you're going to need to plan ahead. You're going to need to call the restaurant and say, hey, I'm coming in. I'm going to be paying with Bitcoin. Because you will. If you want to spend...
Why would I do that? I mean,
Because you're supporting an ecosystem.
Reservations?
So when you send a transaction, you select like a fee amount, and that encourages the miners to more likely take your transaction.
Well, we're not going to get into that right
Okay,
now.
that's a whole
Yeah.
different-
Yeah. No.
I'm trying to explain this stuff to my grandmother.
Oh.
She'll throw me out the back door.
Oh, you want to talk to your grandmother? Get her Celine.cash on
But
Bitcoin
until
Cash,
this
because
stuff
this
becomes
doesn't...
mainstream and just easy to use. All this stuff, that's why it's not.
That's what I'm working on. I'm working on mainstreaming this stuff. And the fact of the matter is, at this point in the game, it's a very uphill battle. If you want to know why it's an uphill battle, read the book or listen to the book called Hijacking Bitcoin, and it pretty well explains why cryptocurrency is not used every day.
How about credit
I
crypto?
invest in crypto.
You know,
I don't know anything about that. I know there's services out there that provide that. There's some
you
good
know,
stuff.
like the credit card. I'll pay it next month.
It doesn't fall into my
monthly
my belief of how crypto should be used. I believe in peer-to-peer and using cryptocurrency credit cards. It's fully custodial. It's basically just a fiat game. I mean, it's not crypto at all. They're saying yeah.
In some
If I
conversions,
spend it at 3 million,
it's
how stupid was that?
a bunch of fakery,
Will you ever
making
get
it
there?
look like something when
I might
it's.
be dead.
When you just you're paying them fees, so you're not getting the value out of your trade. So like he mentioned, it's like Forex. You know, I mean,
And they're
crypto.
probably throwing some of your Bitcoin in interest accounts. So they're making money off of your held money like any bank would do.
Yeah.
What about mining Bitcoin? It's just a corporate.
Good luck.
Yeah, I mean, I don't waste my time with. I don't.
You have to own a data center.
Yeah.
But it's very successful.
Yeah. I mean, what'd you guys think of the presentation? I mean, y'all stuck around.
So I have one more question for you.
Yeah.
So, how do you feel about big corporations moving to crypto-based payments?
Oh, sorry, time's up. What?
So, you know, it costs $25 to wire money. Most big companies buy stuff from a vendor, they wire the money to close out the invoice. At a certain point, I think it would make sense to migrate that to something that's cheaper. Whether that's a
XRP 's
stablecoin or... Yeah, but
Yeah.
no corporations, as far as I know, are doing that yet.
Yeah, well, this is where MasterCard and Visa come into play and the other banks,
You
because
think that it'll be-
that's XRP's game, is they're selling the fast transactions. So I had a relative that went to Europe a few weeks or months ago, and they says, you go and you pay for something with your American credit card, and it just does it. And that's,
There's a lot of illegal corporations that are doing major wire transfers.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're
There's that
competing
side
at the
of
same
it.
level of most major Fortune 500 levels.
so you're bringing up a point. When I talk a lot about KYC and privacy of money, keep in mind that the banking system, the regulations are being written to stop people or to stop organizations like drug cartels and human trafficking organizations, to prevent them from doing what they're doing. But we're taking the brunt of that, you know? Even when there was KYC or in big banking, there was already rules that you had to have ID for transactions over 10,000. But that didn't stop, I don't know which cartel it was in Mexico, from funneling billions of dollars through HSBC, one of the world's largest banks. And this is a handful of years, or a little bit more than a handful of years
Pay
ago.
off the top, you know, exams.
The point being that my DMV and my kids' grade school and the colleges and the Allegiant Stadium who face checks you and the airports and all that stuff, they don't need that information, you know? I mean, the airport might, but that's still just...
Thank you.
For non-legal.